All right. Clayton here. Just want to talk about, agriculture changing and what that means for the farmer and rancher. And what's the proper way to respond to that? Recently, I think most people have seen, if you're on LinkedIn or you're on Twitter or Instagram, it doesn't really matter too much where you saw it, but you know that land is selling for record high prices right now. Agriculture is very quickly consolidating to some larger companies. There's been a lot of large company buyouts. What else? Been a lot of large company buyouts. Land is getting more expensive. Input costs have skyrocketed for many different reasons. And so agriculture is changing a lot right now. And that can be a very scary thing. So when I say agriculture is changing a lot, I mean that not only are the economics of it changing very quickly, but also the people involved in it are also quickly changing. Farming, it has always been highly politicized, but it's gotten worse. Lobbyists for and against both sides of agriculture have increased in the past couple of years. Spending on farms has gone significantly up since 2020 with COVID relief and everything. So there is just a lot going on, and it just signifies that something is happening, something is changing, and so what does that mean for the farmer rancher? So I don't own land, I don't own cattle, I do not farm every day, but I do care about the agriculture community, and I do want to make sure that I am doing my part and trying to serve and help in any way I can. I think part of that is just being a voice. I like to talk a lot, I've got a lot of opinions, but also I know what I'm talking about, some stuff. I also don't know what I'm talking about a lot of stuff, and so hopefully somewhere in there I can admit when I don't know something and learn from the people who do know something. So agriculture's changing. What does that mean for the farmer and rancher? I think that means for the farmer and rancher that things are going to have to change, and the way they view things is also going to have to change. I was having a conversation with someone who we just recently had on our podcast the other day, and we, as an agriculture community, I know I'm not a farmer rancher, but I do run in ag circles. A lot of my friends are farmers. Like, my primary goal and concern is to make sure the agriculture story is told, and I think a part of that change needs to look like the people who are working in agriculture understanding change and being willing to think forward in that. It's really easy to complain about what is wrong in agriculture and then not do it. It's really easy to be a complainer. It's a lot harder to be a doer. And I've actually talked about this before on my LinkedIn page, but if we're going to be a group of complainers, then nothing's going to happen. So what are you doing to solve the problems that are happening because of this change? Yeah, land prices are high. Yeah, you know what? The idea of buying more land is getting harder and harder every year. The idea of being a small farm is getting harder and harder every year. And to be totally honest, I don't think that's going to change at all. Whether you like it or not, technology is advancing. It is rapidly changing the way that people farm, the amount of labor that has to go into farming. It will always be a laborsome task, but automation is becoming a key player in agriculture and is going to probably reduce man hours needed for certain tasks by a large amount. And life has happened pretty much ever since the Industrial Revolution and the Agricultural Revolution in the 1900s. We're going to keep seeing a decline in farm workers and farmers and ranchers. That number, I think, will continue to decline for years to come. That's how it's been going for the past couple decades. I don't think it's going to get any better by any means, because to be totally honest, yeah, people don't really want to work for their food anymore. And that's hard, and that's hard to hear, but I think that's going to keep going. So for those of you who don't want to quit, who don't want to leave, who don't want to sell your land to a developer or to an investment bank, what are you going to do about it? I'd say a good place to start is be forward thinking. Think about ways to be improving your efficiencies. Look at ways to be learning about, hey, like, what's going on politically, economically, like what are things that at a large scale are going to affect things on my farm, as well as what are things that I can do to minimize the negative effects of those things. So like one of those things is automation, or even just efficiencies. I'm sitting here plowing right now, and I just don't think people, like, I mean, I've been plowing snow for 5-6 years now, and never once has, until this year, crossed my mind, like, is there a way I can do this faster, save more fuel, and reduce wear on my machine? You've got like the general tips of like, oh, well, you can do this, you can do this, but I've never really sat down and said, how can I maximize the use of my machine and my time while moving snow around? And so, like, this storm, I'm practicing maximizing my snow loads and passes, and trying to reduce my back and forth driving, so that hopefully I can reduce fuel usage as well as reduce wear on my transmission, my tires, and my snow pusher. Okay, like things like that are little things that obviously make common sense, but do we actually put those things into practice? And so I think that's one easy way to be forward-thinking, improving that, but also be looking at easy ways to adopt new technologies. I was just in California out with one of my friends who runs an excavation company and a plow company, and their big thing is trying to make sure they're forward-thinking their technology, because if they're an early adopter of that technology, when things like the 2008 recession hit, they can say, well, yeah, we spent a lot of money, but our overhead is reduced because we invested in these new technologies, and maybe a higher cost per dollar initially, but when things get lean, they have to use less resources to get the job done. And it's little things like that that can go a huge, long way in saving money. It's not something that you see immediate results from, but you compare year by year. Okay, how much money do we spend on fuel? How much money do we spend on operators or equipment breaking down, compared to, okay, now that we're more efficient, we use less fuel, we do a better job the first time, we have less guys breaking more things like that can go a really long way. So I think that's another really easy one. But the other one is you gotta be vocal in a kind and humble way. And I'm not perfect at this, I'm trying to get better, but we have to be vocal and saying, hey, we work in the agriculture community, and because of that, that makes us professionals. I'm not a professional farmer, I'm not a professional rancher, I'm a professional photographer. I will be the first one to admit that. But you guys, if you're a farmer or rancher, are professionals in your field. Like, you have to give yourself some credit and say, we are professionals. And because you're a professional, that gives you credibility to talk about agriculture, farming and ranching, and what you do for a living. If the people who are actually doing the job every day can't claim authority over what they do and claim knowledge over what they do, well then obviously the people who walk in with their masters and their PhDs in ag science and soil biology and things like that, well obviously those people who have been in the classroom for the past 10 years, they look like experts because they spent 10 years in the classroom. But like, you guys have on the ground knowledge that a lot of those people don't. You can see what's going on in your soil. You can see what's going on in your cattle. Okay? Like, you can look at those things and say, hey, I actually do know what I'm talking about. So being vocal and taking authority over the knowledge you have as a professional in your industry, I think, can go a long way. And also, just being a friend to people who might not know a lot about agriculture. No one wants to listen to someone who's going to point fingers and say, you suck. I don't want to listen to people like that. If someone walks up to me and says, "You're the worst, you're against me, you know, you just are out to get me, you know, you're just pushing an agenda." And it's like, okay, well, obviously I don't want to talk to that person. They're being a jerk. And so when we look at people who are against agriculture, and we look at people who are lobbying against it, I have a lot of issues with that. But, you know, I have to remind myself, like, if I point fingers at them and I argue with them, then nothing's going to happen. You know, you look at the current state of politics in the U.S. and it's like nothing gets done. These two sides don't care about even trying to find a middle ground or trying to work through things. They've gotten so entrenched in their ideologies that they have given up on the conversation, and we have had far too many government shutdowns because of that, because no one wants to talk about it. Okay, people are stubborn, and it's only getting worse. And so if ag wants to see a change, it's not going to start by pointing fingers and calling everyone else a villain. If you want change, you have to say, okay, I think you're wrong. How can I help you understand me better? How can we keep this conversation going? It's not a let's end this conversation and let's hope you change sides. It's not going to happen. So I just want to encourage anyone who works in the ag community to be open and willing to have conversations without the goal of just winning all the time. A healthy relationship is not formed over the course of one conversation with someone. A healthy relationship with someone is formed over months, if not years, of deep conversation and open, honest conversation with that person. Okay, the same goes with the people who oppose agriculture and who oppose you. And so I think we do need to drop the us versus them mentality. There's days where I fall into that trap, because when you go us versus them, it gets you a lot of attention. Every single one of my LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts that have ever gotten any traction ever have all been because of something controversial. And yeah, and just because it works doesn't mean I should keep doing it. Yeah, and so that's just my encouragement. Be forward thinkers, be willing to change, be willing to be more efficient. And sorry guys, I'm getting over a cold, just coughing a little bit, but be willing to have the conversation. So that's all I've got to say for now. Yeah, let's keep pushing ag forward. Let's keep changing, growing, and let's see the ag industry change for the better. Let's see the conversations about agriculture changing for the better. Yeah. So that's all, guys. Thanks for listening.